sculpture, and then we can talk about the image behind it.
Okay.
So I figured that was kind of the best way to approach it.
Okay. How you feeling? You ready for level 14?
Yes, I'm actually really excited about it, about the timing of it.
Okay.
Getting ready to start with school and taking the time to kind of, do a bunch of stuff I've never done before, as opposed to being super focused on what I know. Really, it was a lot of fun and frustration, but it was a lot of fun, and I definitely like what it did for me as an artist. So, but
All right.
otherwise, my baby is a swimmer. So
Yeah.
just trying to get used to that feeling again has been a little weird, but I'm super happy about that too.
That's awesome. And how's it been balancing?
Well, at first it was really difficult because I was like in and out of the hospital and everything, but now I'm kind of in a stable place. The
Okay.
baby seems to be doing well, and so balancing that hasn't been as difficult, but I'm tired all the time.
Yeah.
And my little one has become like super clutchy. So, because he sees the changes and like he can't sleep on my belly anymore, and so he's kind of weirded out by what's going on. But no, I'll make it work. It'll work out.
All right. Well, go ahead up to the screen share and let's see what you got.
Oh, okay, cool. No, yes. Okay, so that's the first. Can you see that?
Yes. So you had a custom sphere one belt. Remind me a little bit about what we're moving towards and if you feel like that's still the goal or if that has shifted at all.
Well, the goal was for me to have, at the end, was for me to have my own installation show.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's still going to work. Having my own show will probably still happen, but having an installation show is a little farther off than I thought. I had an original, a really great idea, I thought, surrounded by Asian philosophy, and I did not realize all of the very different things that I needed at the time.
Right.
So talking it over with my instructors and whatnot, we've gone with something a little bit simpler, just having me focus on really merging my photography and sculpture so that my pieces don't look like two pieces thrown together haphazard. And the new theme that I'm going for is portals, and how we transition from one place to another, or ideas, how they shift from one to the other. I thought that would be something a little easier to explain as I transition from photography more into sculpture.
Okay. So tell me about this piece.
Go ahead.
Tell me about this piece.
Oh, okay. So this is Bloom. All of my pieces so far are backlit film, they're printed on backlit film, so they're translucent, and then they're put on acrylic, and then they're flood coated with polyurethane. And then as each layer of polyurethane cures or is in the middle of curing, I add things like ground foam and ink and manipulate those things on top to enhance the image. And then I go back with a Dremel and kind of carve out pieces in places to give it more of a relief texture to it. So it has a texture on top and through it. So besides the image itself. And then when you view it, the light comes from behind, so you see the photograph, and then you see everything else that was placed on top of it.
So is this one a sculpture or is it a print?
It would be considered a relief sculpture.
Okay.
It still hangs on your wall like a print and whatnot, but because of all the texture that comes forward from the image, it would be considered a relief.
Okay.
So then that's the actual image that's underneath it.
Okay, I follow. So let's go back to the finished piece. Okay. So you're really branching off into artistry and away from photography. Photography is definitely part of the medium, but it's just a piece of it, which I love. I love that it's so unique because it's setting you apart from everyone else. I think you're gonna have to decide as you're doing these which part you want to be more prominent, because in this one it's definitely like, are they actual flowers or what are the things that are overlaid?
Those are supposed to be impressionistic flowers that are created out of ink,
Sorry.
alcohol inks. Obviously, I have a long way to go with my ink work and trying to have it enhance the photograph as opposed to cover it up, so that you can still see the initial impression of the image coming through. One of the biggest problems I had was when I print my images, they don't look the same on the backlit film when they're first printed as they do when they're covered in the polyurethane, and then again with the different layers of ink.
Right.
And so figuring out how dark or how light I have to go with the print in order to keep it coming through has definitely been a challenge.
Well, I like them. So these are inks. They're not actual flowers. They're paintings essentially.
In a sense, yeah.
Okay. And I love them. I love the impressionistic feel, and I like the overall concept of the photo. I feel like there's quite a bit of negative space that I'm not sure is necessarily adding to it. But if these are sculptures, it's not as simple as going and cropping and printing another copy. So this is really tough because it's such a unique thing and it's so many different mediums combined that I imagine it would be very difficult to do a rough draft. But are you considering that, or are you playing it all with Photoshop, to just kind of play with it and get an idea of what you want, or how are you creating these?
Well, I have a sketchbook, and I've been kind of stick figure drawing everything down to kind of plan out what shape I want it and what type of impression I'm trying to get across, and trying to work the layers out. Unfortunately, though, each piece is actually unique. The polyurethane cures at a different rate depending on the temperature of the air in the room, and so the inks and the foams all act differently because of those same different all the variables. So learning that has been a challenge. It's been interesting, but there have been pieces that have started burning on me in the middle of the process, and others that have just melted and shriveled away. So planning the steps exactly is not something I know that I probably will never be able to have full control over.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of, like, in this sense, having the flowers and kind of having the leaves and stems reach over was something I did plan for, but how they actually came out, not so much.
Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with us?
I would say that I'm at a 7 with it.
Okay. All right. Well, we are to the point now in Sphere 1 where you're really kind of branching off, and we're looking for you to, move forward and kind of take charge of your own destiny. So I'm going to give you a 2 because you gave yourself a 7.
Okay.
I like a lot of the elements of this. I would like to see just a little more prominent some of the features of the photograph, and maybe not all of them, but I think that it would bring a lot to it if we could pull out just her eyes and maybe her lips, like some of the facial recognition a little bit more, because I
Mhm.
feel like she gets lost just a little bit behind it.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel if we could have warmed her up a little, because everything else about this is very warm tones. You know, you have a lot of orange, red, pink going on, not only in the flowers, but in the specks. So I feel like if we could have pulled that out just a little bit more in her skin tones, that might have made it pop a little bit more. Right now, I think it's just a little too detached from the flowers in the photos to be a cohesive piece. So I feel like it's almost there, but it's not quite. And I feel like there's maybe just a little bit too much negative space around, that I feel like it has to go one way or the other. So either we need to pull her out so that she's more prominent, or we need to fade her out so that she's less prominent, so that it's almost entirely about these beautiful impressionistic kind of flowers, and you may not even notice her the first time you look at it. Um, which I love that idea because it keeps you looking at the art. Um, but overall, it's such a unique concept, and I think out of everybody that is in House Lark right now, that you have found your voice and your dialect and your style more prominently than anybody else, in the sense that you are so far set apart that it would be hard pressed for anybody to find something that looks like an Ava piece, or that, you know, one of your pieces looks like something else. You know, like Martin Higgs, when he was with us, he had a very defined kind of high fashion hairstyle, but I'd seen other work that followed that sort of suit. It's definitely a genre and a style of photography, and you get that with certain conceptual photographers. And you know, people say all the time, "Oh, it's in Sue Bryce glamour, or it's Lindsay Adler fashion, or it's Trey Ratcliffe landscape," kind of thing. Like, you know, they start to fit into genres, and you not only are going to be the stepping stone that gets compared, but it's going to be really, really hard for anybody to compete with you, which is just monumentally successful and very, very difficult to do. So I'm really, really impressed that you found this niche, and think that you're definitely in the right direction. So you're definitely getting bonus points for that.
Yay!
So, yay! So let's see another one. What else did you bring?
Okay, so this is the original image,
Okay.
and then this is the final piece.
Okay.
My biggest issue with this was that in this case, the room that I was working in changed temperatures as I was applying the layer that goes across her chest. So the part that has the sun, so that blazing white sun that I was hoping to see got completely covered up. And no matter how much light I put behind it, it really doesn't come back out. So I'm upset that I lost that. And this piece is also flat and a wall relief like the other, the first piece that I showed. But I really feel like this piece should have maybe had some more of the mountains kind of pouring off the bottom of the image, or had more of the flow from her fabric and the inks coming off. I feel like it's, as an image, it's too constrained.
Okay.
But otherwise, I really like this, and in person, this is my favorite of all the images I've done so far.
I like this one a lot too. I love the textures and the paint sort of following the motion of the photograph. I do think that, again, you're having a lot of negative space up in that top corner with the white, that I don't think that you need to fill with anything profound, but there's a lot of texture coming off of the left hand side. Not the inks, but just the the texture, and it may just be the way that it was photographed too, that it's not picking it up. But I feel like if some of that texture and just a couple of the flecks were in that top corner, that it would help anchor the image, because it just kind of floats off that way. But overall, I love the colors. I love the motion of it. I love the impressionistic feel. And I think that this is a really strong piece for you. And these are definitely gallery show installation worthy kind of stuff. This is really impressive, Ava.
Thank you.
It really is. I'm going to give you 3 for this one. I like this one a lot.
Yay.
All right, let's see what else you got.
Okay, this is the initial image. And then this is the final piece. Hold on. One of my biggest problems with this image is you can see from the original print are the colors completely changed. And so my blues went cyan, my yellows and greens almost completely disappeared. And so a lot of the impression from those colors that would have been there is pretty much gone. I also don't like the way some of the ink did the tracing lines kind of to follow the water, but some of it's very blobby and blackish. And so it looks a little blocked out in a way that I wasn't intending. However, the texture on this one in the relief form came out really, really well and cooperated in a way that the others hadn't. And even though it's drained of color, it really isn't as drained of contrast as some of the others were, so it's not as soft. And so this could stand on its own no matter what time of day it is, or even if someone just put it on a wall and didn't have light behind it, you'd still see it very clearly.
Right.
So I think it's successful in those ways. And at the same time, it's a little bit more, it's a lot closer to my traditional photography that I did before I went into some of the stuff that I'm doing now with composites. So.
I got to tell you, I'm not a fan of this one. This one's not cutting it for me. It would get a 1. One, I think that compared to the other 2, that if you had these 3 on a gallery wall, that it's the sore thumb. It would really stand out from the other 2, and it doesn't fit, and it's not showing a similar kind of style that we were seeing in the other 2. So I don't feel like it really echoes the voice that we were just talking about. Okay. And this is really difficult too, because we're looking at them in digital, and these are sculptures and they're textures and they have all this overlay that is not being properly conveyed through digital format, which I think is going to be something that you are going to have a hard time with anytime you're showing anywhere that isn't a physical brick gallery. Because there's going to be a loss of translation between what people are seeing and what your art actually is. And I think you're going to have to adopt specific photo skills to photograph your work in a way that showcases it as a piece of art, not as a digital print, essentially. Okay. So things to consider. I actually think that if you're offering these up for sale, what you probably want to do is light them properly and set them up the way that you would want them displayed, and photograph them on a wall or on a table or something, like product photography. And Darn might actually be a good resource for you with that, because he's our product photographer and does a lot with that. So he might have some good tips and tricks for that. But I think that would help to further communicate that these are art pieces and sculptures and not just prints.
Okay.
As far as this one goes, it looks like somebody was playing with the paint tool in Photoshop. And I think that some of that is the way that it was photographed, because it looks like a print. It looks like a digital image right now. It doesn't look like a sculpture. We're not picking up a lot of the textures and any of the gradation in the surface from the sculpture. It just looks like a print that has a texture applied over it and these little like ink blot kind of things. I do like the blue coming off of her dress and sort of melting into the water. I think that's strong, but I think that the black and the blue up and around, particularly the one over her ear, just become just this like distracting overlay that don't really work. This one wouldn't make your portfolio for me, if we're being honest, but I do think that it shows promise, and I do like where you were going with it. I just think that this was one that you know may have been more of a learning process, and part of the education value of understanding the inks and epoxies and everything that you're working with, rather than a successful gallery piece.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. Okay.
It's kind of your fault though, because you set the bar really high with the first two. So.
All right. So I have 2 more photographs that are just photographs, and then I have my full water sculpture.
Okay. Well, let's see the photographs, and we'll move up to the water sculpture.
Okay. So this is the next image that I'm looking to actually turning into a sculpture. This one is the image is darker, kind of like cleanse, but it still has some of the same qualities of bloom and aurora with the whites and fading, so that it's not so blockish. The challenge with this piece is that I want to make it curved so it won't be flat, which will mean melting the plastic after I've applied it. And then I'm also looking at actually growing different types of mosses over the parts of her that are green, dark green.
So it becomes like living artwork.
Yes.
Now, if somebody buys that piece, are they going to have to like water it?
They would have to mist it because, you know, moss doesn't need that much water. But it's really great if you have asthma, so it's a good plant to have. Awesome.
That's really neat. See, I love the ingenuity of that. This living, breathing artworks. That sounds amazing. And I really like this image as the basis to build off of for one of your pieces, because you have some of the texture in the skin that makes it 3-dimensional, but it's very contrasty, and it almost looks like a sort of like an ink drawing or even a photocopy, which I think will stand up really well with all the layering that you do on top of it with the different elements that add to your sculptures and things. I think that this will be a really strong piece. I'm really interested to see this one when it's done. And I love this photo as a whole, and that it kind of fades in and out of the background. This is one of my favorites that I've seen from you that's been this sort of photo composite base, because I've been watching what you've been sharing, and this is one of my this is a personal favorite of mine of yours.
Yay.
So definitely keep me posted on this one, because I want to see the finished product, especially if you're doing living moss. That's really neat. I like it. So I'm going to give you a 3 for this one based on its photographic value with you and the texture and seeing it as the base for the image, and also for where you're looking to go with it. I think that's really impressive.
Okay. So this is the last image.
Okay.
I started playing around with underwater photography, which is great since I'm pregnant and the baby loves it, but it is very, very tiring. I had a friend who was helping me, and with the camera that I have, in order to have your lights sync, if they're not connected by an underwater cable, which we didn't have, you have to have the sensor part of the camera over the water so that it can remotely get the rest of the light. And then the distance isn't really there.
Right.
So he was literally trying to leap the light over the water at the same time that the model was in position, with me hopefully having the sensor in the right spot without having the lens above water.
Right.
So unfortunately, what happened with doing that was it really limited where I could be positioned, where any of us could be positioned, and really limited us while we're still learning the process. Still, I think that the image that we came out with was really, really great. The majority of the light, with the exception of the spikes that are coming out of her head, is actually the way the light for the most part fell. It really did kind of look like wings when it fell. And the bottom of the pool started to turn into this murky, weird shape, which kind of looked like roots and trees. So when I was editing, I tried to bring that out a little bit more, especially on the left side. But I really enjoyed it. I want to do more of it, but I don't really know where to go when it comes to underwater photography. So it's a lot of research and time.
Are you in my Artistic Seductions group on Facebook?
No. I
Okay.
think it's the one group I'm not a part of.
Okay. So I have a photography group on Facebook. There's about 2,000 members in it. It's called Artistic Seductions. If you just go to facebook.com/group/JessicaLark, it'll take you there. But a good friend of mine, Joe Hodnott, who I just recommended for the Mastery fast track with the Arcanum, he does pretty much solely underwater photography, and he's incredibly talented at it. So drop a request in that group so that I can connect the two of you. Okay. Because he's just really generous with all the information. He's really a stand-up guy, and you and him can definitely have a dialogue, and he can give you some really good pointers on underwater photography, because that is one realm that I have not yet dove into, pun intended. But even still, for a first attempt, I love the light on this and the effects that you got. And I see the wings and I see the tree roots. I think there's something very ethereal about this image that's really strong. I think if you're going to use it as the basis for one of the sculptural pieces, that you might want to crop in just a little bit and take out like maybe the bottom 2 to 3 inches of the print so that it's more square than rectangle, because I don't know that that's going to add anything substantial, or that once you start adding all your layering, that it's even going to have enough contrast to really pull out. You might just lose it anyway, and then you'll end up with a lot of negative space below. And I think she's so beautiful, and you have this amazing light on her face and everything around, that I really want this image zoomed in closer to be able to appreciate it. From what I'm seeing with your images, once they're sculptural pieces, you're losing a lot of the contrast, and they become sort of this soft, ethereal kind of feel, which I really love. But I think that dodging and burning to the point of excess may be helpful for you, because you lose so much of that contrast with each layer that goes on top of it, that you might learn that by over dodging and burning to the point that we would consider it probably like a ruined or a badly retouched photograph, may work perfectly for the foundation for you to pull out exactly how much you want once all these other layers and things go on top of it. Okay. But I love this. And so she's underwater, and I'm amazed because she looks underwater as far as everything around her, but her hair still is like, just got this wild, like African priestess, thing going on that I really love, but it's not up and everywhere. So I don't know how you accomplish that, but it's awesome and it looks amazing, and it gives the illusion and makes me want to question whether it was composited or not as the viewer, which I think is really cool. So this is another one of yours that I just love it. I love the light and I love the texture. Purely as a photograph, the only things that would bother me is the really, really stark tan lines. They bother me just a little bit. The lighting on her face is beautiful though. And I would like to see just a little bit of her tummy brought out, because we're losing it in the shadows, and it almost severs her upper body from her lower body, like from right under the rib cage until like way low in the waist. That shadow is almost cutting her in half for me.
Okay.
So we could recover some of those shadows. I think that'd be really cool. But again, it depends on where you want to go. And that's what's really neat, is that I can give you all kinds of feedback on the photos like this, but I have no vision for what the finished image looks like as a sculptural piece with all these inks and these epoxies and all of these um, different layers on them. So I'm very curious to see where you go with it. It's beautiful though. Well done.
Yay!
So, all right. Is that it, or we have one more?
Those are it for the images, and then the last one is the full sculpture.
Yeah.
This piece is called Hinamoa. It was my piece based on Maori, the Maori myth of Hinamoa. It's a story about love, and she's drawn to her love so strongly that she ends up trying to cross this really huge lake, and she drowns, and the spirits take pity on her, and they bring her back up out of the water, and they place her on the shore where her lover will find her, and give her spirit back to her at the moment that he finds her, so that they can be together. And so this piece looks completely different when it's lit from behind, only when it's lit in the front. Like, depending on how you light it, it looks different. It has different colors because of the layers and whatnot. The initial idea was to have a photograph inside of it. And that turned out that this is one of the times that the photograph just kept burning because it couldn't handle the temperature of all the epoxy and polyurethane I was using. So I did life casting on my friend's face, and then I poured the block layer by layer. It's the block itself is 2 inches thick, and then the face is to size.
Right.
So that's another 2-3 inches. It weighs about 27 pounds, and it's held up by fishing line.
Nice. So what is the block? It's like an epoxy, like latex kind of thing, or like a resin?
Yeah, it's a resin epoxy, and it's layered with the inks.
Okay.
So, and I can only do 1/8 of an inch at a time. And then as it's curing, I would manipulate not just the inks, but I would start scraping it up into chunks. So
Right.
all of these blotches and weird dark lines are actually from me scraping it up to kind of look almost like waves on top of water, or ice chunks. It ended up coming out looking more a little bit like ice chunks and broken waves.
How happy are you with this?
At first, I didn't like it, but once I saw it finished and lit the way I would have it lit, I was extraordinarily happy with it. Like, I would give this a 9,
Okay.
especially not having any idea of how to work with the resins on their own, and then considering all the obstacles that I overcame to actually make it. So
I think this is beautiful. I love the colors rolling in and throughout. I think I would have liked to have seen the face uh, fade a little bit more into the colors. Like, I love the colors that are coming up over it, but this silly putty pink, I'm not sure that I'm completely sold on. But I think that's totally personal preference, and somebody else is going to love it for that. But the texture in it is gorgeous. It has this sort of, like you said, it's like water, but like water meets like stained glass and like precious gemstone. And it's very, very unique, which again, I think is just phenomenal. And I could totally see this being like the centerpiece of, of an art show or an installation. And I love that you are stretching. You're so far outside of the box that you're into like trapezoids and and octagons. Um, and I just think that that's really courageous. And I think to create great art that you have to have that kind of courage. And I love it. And you're probably going to burn a lot of photos and you're probably going to mess a lot of them up learning the process. But I already see very unique art coming from you in what is really like the beginning of your journey. So I think that once you have, you know, a couple of months and then a couple of years under your belt playing with this, and you start to master all of these things and know how to manipulate them with what you want, no one's going to be able to touch you in forms of competition. Like I see these pieces going for a lot of money once we build you a full collection. And I'm just really proud of you from where you came and watching like your, you know, your level 4 critique and you coming in to where you are now. You've had so much growth in such a short time and a short number of levels that it's inspiring to watch you flourish, because that's exactly what you're doing right now. You're just blooming. And I think that we're going to see a lot of really, really great things from you in the next couple of months.
I hope so. I give birth in 5.
Well, that too. All right, so you can turn off the screen share. And so a couple of thoughts with these. I'm really loving the artwork, but I'm really thinking that one of the things that we need to pay attention to with you in these is you giving a lot of thought to how you're photographing your finished pieces. I think that there's probably a lot being lost in translation. And even with the last one that we can clearly tell is a sculpture, I think that we need to pay attention to what the backgrounds are and have them on, you know, on clear white or black backgrounds so that there's nothing distracting. And especially with like the clear epoxies, you don't want any color cast coming off other things and distorting what the actual color of the images are. I definitely want to see 3D kind of photographs of it so that it's clear that it's a sculpture and not just a print or a photograph that was digitally manipulated. Because if I didn't know you or anything about you, the first 4, I would think were done in Photoshop with just texture overlays. Like it's a digital composite. So I want to see that they're sculptures and that they're other things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. How are you feeling about what you're accomplishing and where you're going right now?
I'm actually really happy. I'm really excited. I know that I have a lot further to go, but the further I go, the more interested I am in the process, and knowing where I was last semester and how very unhappy I was. So towards the beginning of this year, I was really unhappy with what I was producing, but I knew where I wanted to go. And I think that the biggest steps that I've taken are going where I didn't think I needed to, and trying things that I thought weren't relevant at all, but doing it for the sake of completing an assignment or trying something different. And then it ended up enhancing my work in ways that I never expected. So
you're flourishing and flying with your artistry, but you're also getting ready for new additions and doing the mama thing from the beginning again. How are you seeing those two coinciding? Is this how many kids do you have now? What'll this be, your third? 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Number 3.
Okay.
Well, I'm in a 6-week class right now where I'm going to try and finish working on those pieces that I had shown you, and a few more. And then after that, I'm actually taking a break from a full year break from the brick and mortar school. And
Okay.
1, so I can focus on being a mama, and 2, because being inside the brick and mortar school, the assignments can be constricting and doesn't give me the space that I need to really fully flush out some of the other things. So I would like to do more of the underwater photography, which I'm not going to be able to if I'm in the brick and mortar school.
Right.
So and working on my composites and whatnot. So it gives me time to do it on my time without taking away from me being a new mom. So.
Right. Which I think is totally important, and I absolutely get that. That's one of the best things of owning my own company and doing the art is that I get to walk my kids out to the bus every morning, and I'm there when they get home, and I don't want to miss that. You know, Katie's turning 10 in yeah. And it's like a decade like that. Like, I swear she turned 10 faster than it took me to turn 30. Like, it just goes, like, time starts speeding up. And I'm sure you understand that too. You know, you'll have this newborn and all you'll do is look at your oldest and go, I don't even remember you being that little, you know?
Yeah, he's going to turn 17 in September. So
yeah,
getting ready for college. I'm like, wait, no, you're not supposed to be getting ready for college.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I'm all about you giving that the priority. And then really it's just a matter of physical and mental health for you. Because when I picked up a camera when I was pregnant with my son, he's going to be 8 this year. And I was playing at photography with this stupid little 2 megapixel point and shoot. Because I was doing body paintings and I was really just looking to photograph the body art because eventually they wanted to wash it off. So I wasn't calling myself a photographer. I was just calling myself an artist. And then it's, you know, like a year into that project, it just kind of photography found me. But there's a picture of me somewhere with my sister-in-law trying to help me get off the floor because I was 8 months pregnant and painting this girl. And then I couldn't get up because I was too big, you know, and I was doing, wall murals before that, and I quit doing wall murals because I kept bumping my belly against the wall and ruining the paint I've just done. You know, so you know, things that people laugh at now but you don't think about. And I remember going home and crying because I spent 2 hours painting this monkey and then bumped my belly against it and smeared it. And so there's definitely a balance to be struck. And I think that this is actually probably going to be a little bit more difficult for you because, you know, sitting and having a newborn that just wants to be held for 4 hours at 3 a.m. or nursing is totally different when you're sitting on a computer typing and holding. You can't be like carrying them around in like a baby sling, working with epoxies and, you know, paint thinners and chemicals like that. So I could see that being a hindrance for you as well, but I don't want to see you lose all the momentum you've picked up either. But I also think that it's important for you to set your priorities and understand your limitations. So where are you seeing that going in the next year?
Well, in the fall, about a month after I give birth, supposedly, is when the BFA entrance exam is going to happen. And as a sculpture major, I'm trying to enter the BFA program as a sculpture major, and I've already gotten a waiver so that my spot will be held till I come back. So all of my plastics and everything else, I will continue once I return to school. But one of the things that has happened going to school is that because they don't really know what to make of what I'm doing, they've been trying to separate my sculpture work and my photography work. And that's not something I want to happen. And so going, you know, basically spending the majority of this time really, really working on sculpture, I think it'll be a good break for me to get back to photography and just doing photography, which is where all of my ideas come from, and taking that time to really heal myself and make sure that I'm still going where I want to go, so that when I come back to school, I'll be able to dive back into the plastics and I wouldn't have lost who I was in the process, being so wrapped into being a mom.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, so you passed level 14 with flying colors. Are you still feeling like your Sphere 1 map is pushing you in the right direction? Do we need to amend anything? Is there anything that I can help you with at this point in the juncture?
Um, the only thing I don't know is if the second half of the sphere is going to last me a year or not. The thing is, if this sphere is going to take me until I'm back in school and lasts another year, then I should be able to continue doing everything because I'll have the time to do it. But if not, if I end up going through these pieces earlier, then they might have to change, because once I do have the baby, or even a month or two before I have the baby, I'm just not going to be able to produce pieces for a show or produce the kind of stuff that I'm doing right now, just for health and safety concerns.
Right. Well, maybe instead of producing sculptures and things that are for the show, then maybe what we can do is work on a photography resume of work where you can still sketch out ideas for sculptures that you have, and we can work on the photographic foundations, because that's what they all start with is, these beautiful photographs that they then, become these three-dimensional art pieces. So maybe what we can do is amend it so that instead of doing sculptures or definitely working around anything that's not safe while you're pregnant, or, with a newborn, or things that you're just too tired to be messing with, because that's one thing, like, sleep deprived is on your list, and I do not envy you. But working around that stuff, you should definitely be like awake and alert and ready to go. And, especially with that kind of stuff, because it has a shelf life, like I just feel like you have to be on your game. So anything that's written as far as sculptures and installations, maybe what we can do then is work on sketches and photographic outputs of the pieces, and maybe designing around the show itself, so that when the show's done, we know we want, 20 pieces, we want them this big, doing some research for potential galleries and buildings that we could show the installations and things like that. And then the second half of Sphere 1, or wherever we stop at, that might just get rolled into a Sphere 2 for you if you decide to stay in JLark. Or, it's the kind of thing that, like, if you hit level 20 and you decide to jump in one of the other cohorts, or to just focus on the brick and mortar school, like, you and I can still sit down and have a conversation about, this is where I'm looking to go. And we can still give you some steps that you can implement when the time is right for you. My priority for you is just to continue seeing this growth, because I think you're flourishing right now. And I know that for a lot of people, myself included, it's very, very easy to get distracted and exhausted, and and you're healing, and it just wreaks havoc on you. That's why I have 2 and not 3. And I love my kids to death, but there's, it's a balance. And the same way that you were like, oh my God, I don't know what I did with all my free time before you had your first, and then you had your second, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what I did with all my free time before I had 2. You're going to be the same way again. You're going to be like, oh God, remember when I only had 2 kids and life was so easy, So I think you should be very generous with yourself in terms of time and energy, and, just trust those feminine instincts and that maternal thing. And, don't let anything or anyone make you feel guilty about where you want to spend your time, whether that's doing nothing but holding the new baby and rubbing your belly, or sitting and watching TV and eating ice cream, because that's the only thing I miss about being pregnant, was that I could balance an entire bowl of ice cream on my belly. I just had a built-in table everywhere I went. It was great. So if that's what you need to do that day, then do that. And if you, have the newborn and it's been screaming for 8 hours and you need to get away from it for a day and go hop in the studio, then go do that. I think as women, and specifically as mothers, that we suffer from a lot of self-inflicted guilt, that whatever we're giving our time to means that we're somehow neglecting the other or being less than. And I can't tell you how impressed I am that you've been doing all of this, and that there's been so much growth and so much self-discovery between understanding where you are as an artist and where you want to go as an artist, and closing the gap and creating these beautiful places while going to school full time, while being in the Arcanum full time, while taking care of 2 existing children and being halfway through your pregnancy. It's very inspiring.
Thank you.
So, just keep looking over, and if you find that any of Sphere 1 isn't suiting where you are right now, then just drop me a line. I'm really like, it's a choose your own destiny kind of sphere right now with us. So it's very easy for you to change something as long as you come to me with a counter plan and go, this isn't working because of this. Instead, I would like to do this. And as long as you feel that there is growth and I can see that you're not just shirking responsibilities, then I'm right on board. And nobody has been, but that's, some of the levels are really hard. And I've gotten some messages from people that were feeling overwhelmed in Sphere 1 because I did not go easy on any of you. I asked a lot of you because you guys said that you expected a lot out of yourselves and where you want to be. So it's a lot of work, and people like you especially like to dream big, which is awesome. You can absolutely get there. But if you're aiming for the top of the mountain, you got to scale the whole damn thing, whereas somebody else is like, I'm good from the lookout point. I just want to get here, and that's the difference between somebody going, I just want to live comfortably and be able to say I'm a photographer and shoot full time is totally different than I want to create these gorgeous one of a kind sculptures with all of these, expensive and unique epoxies and fabrics and one of a kind things. And I want to create one piece of art from each thing instead of doing prints, and I'll sell that for, that's a much greater ambition. So I'm all about it and I will push you. But I don't want to, there's like a point where pushing becomes something that you feel the need to push back against instead of something that's propelling you forward. So let's just keep open dialogue over that and just keep reminding me, JLark, I'm knocked up, leave me alone for a week.
Okay.
So is there anything else that you wanted to touch base on or discuss or?
No, actually I'm in a really good place right now. So
good. That makes me really happy. All right. Well, I will see you again at level 19. And, pretty much we're keeping office hours once a week. So priority goes to critiques, but you can trade in karma points at any time if you just want one-on-one for whatever you're going through. Even if it's just like, you won't stop gigging and I just need another mom to yell at, just set aside like 20 minutes and we'll have a conversation about it and I'll send you candy.
Okay.
Okay. All right, girlfriend. I will see you at 19. Congratulations.
Yay.
Welcome to level 15. Bye.
Bye.